scordaggini per Nedved, Pirlo, la conclusione in rete, Andrea Pirlo, un gol pazzesco! Del Piero, Alex, Del Piero! La compagna di Pogacar, Pogba, rete, un gol incredibile, Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
Hello and welcome to episode 354 of the Turin Giants podcast. My name is Kevin. I'm your host for this episode, and I am joined just with one other member of our Turin Giants crew today. We are a bit short-staffed, but perhaps there's nobody better to be here when Juve has a challenging performance, because he brings real opinion, perspective that I think we can all benefit from. Frederic, how are you?
Well, given the fact that the final whistle blew over 10 minutes ago, I could be better. But here we are for another group therapy chat. I'm getting used to it. So yeah, let's go. Sadly.
Yes, let's go indeed. We are live on YouTube. Thank you to those who are joining here with us. As our friend Aziru00 indicates, group therapy part 78758. Yes, let's do it. We also have Sebastiano. We have Idirov1. Matt Benedetti, 1897, among others. Thank you for being with us. If you're not here with us live on YouTube, you can certainly watch the video afterwards. And if you're catching this on audio format on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thank you for spending time with us. 5-star review and a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Turin Giants Official goes a long way for us. And thank you so much for supporting our group. I'm trying to think of the right place to start, Frederic, because it seems like so many of the same themes just keep repeating themselves. I guess hence being themes. They wouldn't be themes if they weren't happening continuously and with a degree of repetition. It started out that how this game started, it felt like we were going to have a good afternoon or a good evening, depending on where you are in the world watching the match. And obviously it did not turn out that way. I don't know what's going through your mind right now.
The main thing that's going through my mind right now is how we'll manage without the Champions League qualification, because for me that's almost a certainty that we won't make Champions League qualification. And you have to be very stable management wise to take such a loss to the chin and rebuild from that. Seeing the fact that our management is everything but stable at this point, I really am curious to see if it will be either a resurrection or a complete downfall. And for me, it's a coin toss at this point.
We certainly haven't seen enough over the last couple of years, and despite wanting to be cautiously optimistic around what Comoli is doing, certainly hasn't inspired a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to pull ourselves out of this situation, regardless if we have more in the bank as a result of Champions League qualification, or if we're going to have to be very meticulous and particular and smart about Mercato dealings if we end up finishing 5th or 6th at this point.
And it's not just Mercato for me or the money. I think it's when you play Champions League, you have a unique opportunity to showcase yourself, your squad, to the whole world, because Champions League is followed everywhere, even outside of Europe, as you can be a testament of. It gives you that extra boost. It gives you that spike in morale that you sometimes just need to get through difficult moments as a team. You could be losing against a Lecce in a weekend, but set to face Real Madrid on Tuesday, which makes it for a player, I think, very motivational to get up from an eventual mishap that you've had, and gives you something to look forward to, because it's the main stage. It's the stage you want to play on. You want to be seen by everybody. You want to relive those nights with amazing goals and
Mhm.
turnovers and emotions, and that's something that's going to get taken away from us by ourselves this time. So, keeping things in perspective and seeing, what we've dealt with the past couple of seasons, the question that, rambles on through my mind is, what is this going to mean for us in the foreseeable future? And is it a blessing in disguise?
Yeah, it's hard to predict the
So
future. So
I'm not
maybe
sure, but I'm
maybe
pretty clear on other.
so Frederic, you're I think you're cutting in and out a little bit, but maybe it's a little bit better now. I think maybe we can approach this conversation in two ways. I think let's just start and focus on the match, what we saw. Um, and there's a couple things that we'll unpack, and then just kind of what does this mean for the future, and we can speculate a little bit, which is where I think kind of your head went, but I don't want to go too far down that path until we unpack what we just saw on the pitch today, because again, we saw a team come out with a level of conviction, with the I think with a relatively decent level of pace with the play. I think we took it to them. We weren't conceding much. Our goal came a little bit later than I would have liked. 'Cause it looked like we had the real chance to score one, if not more, in the first 15 minutes. But then it starts to unravel after that. And we see a couple of themes, the two or three that have happened to us all year, where a team scores with their first real chance, which, despite Sassuolo having a little bit more of the ball towards the latter part of the first half, still finished the half without a shot on target, right? They didn't really threaten. And so they score again and then put us on the back foot. And continuously throughout this game, we see ourselves in decent positions, but either an errant pass, a misplaced touch, a blocked shot, and unable to finish off decent runs of play, coming down to the quality of the person making that final making the final touch on a sequence of play there, and individual errors hurting us. Like those are three things that have happened throughout this entire year. Conceding on our first chance, looking at inability to finish off quality passages of play, and individual errors biting us in the ass. And now we've dropped 4 points because of two soft missed penalties, in addition to all the other controversy we've seen this year. So pick one of those topics and let's dive into it.
I'd pick the first shot on goal from the opponent, first shot on goal and first goal from the opponents, because I feel, and I want to be clear on something. To me, the basis of everything that's going wrong during matches is on the players. There's no, you can see the quality is not there, the sharpness is not there, whatever you want, and that's a fact. But while I lauded and applauded Spalletti for everything he's done, we have to take into consideration that he didn't up our defensive organization since he joined. That's just a fact. If you look at the statistics, if you look at the goals we conceded and how we conceded them, you could see that this is not a priority for Spalletti at this point. And I tend to agree with Spalletti in part. However, if you want to neglect your defensive line, you have to make sure that you have a pretty good forward line and be able to score enough goals. And this is, in my opinion, the bottleneck. Our defense is a shambles at times, especially in those important moments where just a step by a defender or a touch by a defender could make the world of difference, without even mentioning the goalie. And the fact that we need to create a lot of chances in order to convert one of those, hopefully. Um, I think that results in a loss of points in different occasions, and that complete loss of points is coming to bite us in the ass right now.
How much of that defensive frailty is a really hard question to answer, though, is stemming from style of play, preparation, organization of the team tactically versus the quality of the players we have sitting in those positions. Because Bremer has looked a half step off since he's come back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You might argue that with a Senesi, just to pick a name that randomly popped into my head, and making that comparison. Would you have better results? Maybe so. However, the thing that irritates me at that point is the fact that we seem to be very self-aware of our minuses, and we aren't for some reason able to remedy them ourselves. You know that Bremer is not the fastest. He wasn't even pre-injury, let alone now. So you would say that he'd focus a lot more on that man marking and being a step ahead of the opponent, while actually he does the opposite of that. He tends to go a lot more deeper now than he did. He wants to compensate by being at the other goal end, for free kicks and corners, which is fine because attackingly he has, that momentum and the ability to make a difference. However, he's not the type of person or player that can, sprint from one goal side to the other in under 10 seconds anymore. So, it's these choices that we make that are very poorly. The choices at times of a Conceição, when he needs to shoot, he passes. When he needs to pass, he shoots. The choices even of Kenan.
And when he shoots, it's right into a player's knees.
Yeah. The choice of Kenan, Thuram, Bremer, Kelly, our keeper, all poor choices, and we get punished for them immediately. And I think we're at a, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, well, it's hard for me to, in this game in particular, it's hard for me to criticize our defensive organization and saying like that was the culprit of conceding and us not winning this game. Because you look at it, like they had one shot on target.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not like we were bleeding shots and opportunities. They capitalized on their one clear-cut chance, and our star center back was a step behind. And Cambiaso was out to lunch and not really on his guy either. But like that's a tackle that Bremer's. You look at the Bremer that we signed in his one solid season, right? You expect him to be there. You expect him to be goal side. You expect him to not even let that player take that shot. And then you have Perrine, who's sipping on a cup of tea there and doesn't even know how to position himself to be in a position to react. From his body language, I don't even know where he was anticipating a shot going based on that play. He wasn't in any kind of
but you can say
to make a dive. Like I don't know what he was doing.
in that, particular circumstance of the goal, you could say that about any player that, was somewhat near the ball in that particular movement, because nobody looked interested. At that point, you could see that there's a space opening up. The counter is set up. You'd expect your midfielders to hurry back and haul ass just to avoid, something dangerous happen. And they just don't. There's this huge, like the Red Sea parted for some strange reason. And it's very easy for us to point at Perrin and Bremer, but I also want to point to Thuram and Luka, who did nothing to try to remedy that counterattack.
We had all these like half clearances leading up
Yeah.
to that one where like we kind of intercepted it, but then like gave it right back, or we couldn't get the ball out, and then they ended up capitalizing. No, that's true. I mean, there is a lot of, it's easy to look at Bremer and Perrin because they were on the tail end of that, but there were 3 other opportunities before that to get the ball out.
Yeah. And what's even worse is you can see that goal, and I wouldn't say a ridiculous manner, but a manner that you could have avoided fairly early on. I believe it was the 57, 58 minutes, somewhere around that mark. I
First
don't
thought
remember.
going through my mind was, great, this is the wake-up call we needed.
Yeah.
It happened early in the half. We've
Yeah.
got 30 minutes left. Just go get it.
Yeah. And then we didn't do anything apart from the last 10 minutes or so. So
I think if the
I
game
mean,
went
that-
another 10 minutes, we would have won the match, but
yeah, it would have, but
sadly, it wasn't.
it wasn't the case. And also I feel that when a game is important, as this one, you should be able to motivate yourself and step on the pedal for that last half an hour and give it everything. Because in the end, Sassuolo is a mediocre team. Let's not beat around the bush. We didn't play Real Madrid or Barcelona prime tonight. And you know that if you grab them in a chokehold for 30 minutes, even not, as regards to technical ability or having that overweight in a technical area, but just by pounding them and keep trying and, pushing in crosses and just trying to be dominant, a goal will fall out of the sky. And we didn't do that. It wasn't until Spalletti, went all mayhem and set up that 4-2-4 that we started kind of aggressively moving towards their goal. If you add that to the factor that, Locatelli had an awful game, which can happen. I'm not here to criticize him because he did a hell of a lot right this season. But McKennie hasn't been the same McKennie for about 3 weeks now. If we're being honest.
He kept finding himself, I think, in good positions with the right ideas, but the final ball, the final touch was just missing. Like, I actually liked the spaces he found himself in.
Yeah.
But he just it's again, like, maybe it's moving on to this next theme here is the quality, right? It's just look,
you can expect
it deserves. I think in context of this Juve and where this team is, he's earned that extension. And our good friend Uncle Beppe talking about meritocracy, and that, like, he's earned this, right? It wasn't gifted. Like, he earned this. But all of us know that in title-winning Juve squads of the past, he's on the bench sitting next to Padoin, right? He's not starting, and he's a player that we've come to depend on, which is indicative of where this team is. And when you have players like him, among others, who you're depending on, that little pass that he could have put through for Boga, I forget, was that towards the end of the first half? That's a pass that a quality midfielder connects. There was time and space for it, right?
Yeah.
And it just couldn't.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, if you're so dependent on McKennie and Locatelli, and I repeat, they've done great for us this season, so there's no sense of hatred towards them or whatever.
No.
But if you depend on them so much that when a game comes that they have this deflation moment, which is normal after the season that they had, and you as a team aren't able to do anything, then maybe, just maybe, you don't deserve that Champions League spot. Because I see Como struggling at times as well with a Nico Paz. One weekend he's the second coming of Christ, and the other weekend he's like this League 3 tier football guy who doesn't know how to stop a ball. If I look at media, but they still win games.
I mean, they're going to
Yeah,
beat Pisa tomorrow like 4-0, right? Like,
yeah, no
they are.
question. They have an opening now to get that gap, but that's the difference. You either win through hunger, because you're hungrier than the other team, or physically better, or you're technically better. And now for Juventus this season, it all depends on the mood of the day. At times we seem physically very strong, and there are games where we think that the players did a marathon prior to kickoff.
Yeah.
You have games where we feel that we've chosen a new turn. We turn things around. We turn the page over, and we're back to feeling as a team where everybody can score, where we play great fluid football. And the next week you see us as if it is a team that's been pulled together just to get 11 men on the pitch who haven't hardly spoken or met each other. So I mean, it's all these things that make it very difficult to get in that top four spot and be competitive for something. And I'm if you have a star boy like Kenan who also did well during this season, I mean, mustn't complain. But today he was horrendous. Let's just say it how it is.
He scored his
Apart from
goal,
the
but
goal,
he was invisible.
apart from that, he was
Look at his
invisible.
passing stats. It was atrocious. I think he was barely
Yeah,
above 50%. And that shot at the end, my gripe with him, like, look, I don't want people taking the comment out of context. Like, I'm thrilled to have a player like Kanan on our team. I'm happy that he's wearing the number 10. He has this extension, and if he continues to grow and improve and be mentally strong, he can be a future banner player for this club, assuming the rest of the club follows suit, right? My critique of him is his shooting is very sporadic in terms of whether it's going to be quality or it just not up to the level of the player we hope he is. He does not. It's easy for me to say sitting in a chair in front of a computer screen, but he just doesn't get his head over the ball. The amount of times that he finds himself in good shooting position and launches it over the goal, like that one in the last 2 or 3 minutes there, you need to be putting that on frame. You lean over and you're side footing that, or you drive through the ball to force a save. There's so many times also when he's trying to cut in from the left side and just launches it over. Not everything needs to be like an a la Del Piero kick. Keep it on the ground and force a save, right? And it's our inability to do that at times. I think he'd have another 5 goals this season if he could just keep the ball on the ground and just put it low into a corner instead of trying to make everything look beautiful.
I was having this discussion this morning in my local Italian bar with a guy that I know. The exact same discussion, and I came to the conclusion during that discussion, because at one point we were comparing Pogba to Yildiz purely on quality and talent, or whatever you may call it. And the guy said, well, for me, Pogba was more talented than Kenan. And I disagreed, but there is one particular thing that, for me, makes a lot of difference. The pressure that Pogba was under isn't the same pressure that Kenan's under.
It's worlds apart.
Worlds apart is one, and the fact that Pogba could learn every day from world-class players. He had a Buffon, a Vidal, a Pirlo, a Tevez in his team, who you can see every day in practice, who you play against, whatever you want to say. And I know a lot of people won't believe me, but you learn so much from from playing with those people, I made my best move forward when I was playing with somebody next to me who played in first division in Belgium. And granted, that's not, world class level, but, that was somebody who stood above the rest technically and had a lot more experience. And just being able to just talk to him or see him in practice, made me grow as a player because you thought, oh, he solves a problem this way, or does this move, or he tries to anticipate another player by just doing this, or mm, putting that feint instead of, going to the left, he goes to the right. You
Mhm.
learn a lot, and there isn't a player in this team that can learn something from. He has to be our leader, the self-proclaimed leader. We bombarded him as a star boy, so every action he makes, every shot that he takes, is followed by this big, wave of pressure that he has to perform. And this is also on us. We should have made it easier for him to ease into the team, set back expectations a little, and not go heavy on the marketing side of things, and ease him into it. And we didn't. We decided to throw a Hail Mary and see somebody with a lot of talent and put all the pressure on his shoulders. And that's just not right, in my opinion.
But what other choice did we have, though? Right? I mean,
True.
I get everything that you're saying, right? Like he's
No,
in a
but
he's in a precarious position as the most talented player with the brightest future, who understands what the jersey meant, who has a passion, who I think genuinely does want to be there, and certainly the new check helps make that decision a bit easier. But I get it. In an ideal world, you're not putting the 10 on his back. You're not putting the captain's armband on his arm. You're allowing him to have a little bit of freedom and flexibility and not have all of that burden when he's 19, 20, 21 years old. But who else is on the squad where you
but
can put that pressure? Like
yeah, and
we forced it upon ourselves where we had to do that for him because we have an incomplete squad
yeah,
that's been
and
poorly
that's the thing.
architected.
The mistakes of the past keep coming back in circle and creating new problems while we're trying to solve the ones in the past, and we need to break that cycle. And that's why, like I said in the beginning of this episode, I don't know if being out of the Champions League will be a blessing or a curse in that respect, because then you can really say, okay, let's go scorched earth in terms of view and vision. Because once you enter Champions League, financially you're going to try and make the most of it as a management team, because the further you get, the more points you get, the more money gets pocketed. So it makes sense to put patches on a wooden leg at times in order to get those millions in, because you're in dire need. But on the other hand, if you have no certainty of receiving those or obtaining those, then maybe that makes room for a bit more out of the box thinking and planning ahead, which,
Yeah.
in my opinion, is already a plan B scenario, or should be after tonight, I hope.
So we're talking about the quality of certain players. One player who I do want to talk a bit about before we move forward is Turam. What an underwhelming performance again from a player who we see these moments of spark and these the speed that he can possess, and sometimes having a really good touch and these bolting runs upfield, and it's an energy that we don't see from any other player that's in our central midfield. You can't get that from Locatelli. You can't get that from Coop Miners. You can't get that from McKennie. Uh, obviously his family ties to the club through his dad gives the Juventini, I think, this extra attachment to this player, desire to see him succeed. But he just seemed totally out of sorts tonight. I
Yeah.
just
But he has been for the whole season. And then we come back to the thing that we discussed. We're too much dependent on players who don't possess the quality. I know a lot of people during Bepe's show were kind of negative about us potentially moving him for Goretzka, But if you ask me tonight, hey, would you rather start in this game, just to set an example, start Goretzka or Thuram? I take Goretzka any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I'll take Goretzka after he ran a marathon this morning
Yeah.
after his cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, I mean, at times we make it difficult on ourselves as well because we tend to keep focus on those players and hoping that they, eventually break through and will be more than what they've shown. But at times, you gotta accept the losses as well. Maybe this is the ceiling that Thuram has reached. It might be that he, becomes something more, but in this position, I don't think he ever will. The same goes for Koopmeiners, who gets thrown in again to do relatively nothing. I mean, we've been kind of, fairly critical about Openda and David, and rightfully so. But at times it feels like we're, just, pulling out smoke and mirrors to not state the obvious, as in that, a lot of players are underwhelming in terms of quality, and everybody's doubting on the fact if they'll ever get to that level of quality that we should demand as Juventus.
And then, so we move to the third and kind of final theme, right? So we talked about conceding on the first chances. We're talking about the quality, and then moving to individual errors that end up penalizing us. I mean, the biggest one to look at is certainly the penalty today. Look, it sucks, right? He converts that. We're probably talking about 3 points and hoping Pisa can do something tomorrow to help us out, solidify a fourth position, being critical of the team for not taking advantage of their chances, but still pulling out for the win. Obviously, that didn't happen. Locatelli went for placement versus power, but his placement was wildly off and hit it too central, allowing the keeper to come up with he caught it, right? Like, more
Yeah.
or less.
He kind of, plucked it like an apple out of a tree, to be honest.
Which was, I think, the icing on a cake for a off night for Locatelli. He had, I think, a defensively pretty nice first half. He had 1 billion touches in this game. Almost 140 touches in this game, right? Like it was continues to be the person that the play flows through, and he was just a bit off, and that certainly was poor. But look, I mean, he had a header in the first half that, instead of heading it to a corner, heads it into the ground. We talked about some of the missed shots that we had. Duzan kind of tripped over that ricochet after Milik's attempt, right? There's just these, again, moments of quality, but also mistakes that we really suffer from individual mistakes.
The question begs, did he have to take that penalty? And I'm not sure if Yildiz would have taken it or somebody else, it would have been a goal. But if you're, having that bad of a game, because it was just a bad game, and you're not in the game, and you could tell by his face, because I said, my wife was sitting next to me, and I said, he's going to miss it. I think he's going to miss it. Because you just looked at his face while he had the ball. It was like, oof, I'm not comfortable with this. So the question begs, should he have been the right person to take that gig at that point? And I'm not going to say if Yildiz took it, then it would have been an automatic goal or whatever. But also there, if you have an experienced player in your team, and not necessarily the one that's going to take that free kick, but an international renowned player, he'd tell the coach, oh, don't let Loca take it, or ask Loca, do you feel up for it, or whatever. But, it was just Yildiz taking the ball, Spalletti shouting, no, Loca, Loca, Loca. And Loca looked at the ball and at Yildiz and was like, oh my God. Once again, apart from the quality issue, there, is the issue that you just need these veteran players, not in terms of age, but, players with balls of steel who can read a game or communicate with their fellow teammate and sense some tension or whatever, and try to, get the right decision, and at that point, or decision that the game needs in order for you to get that win. And we lack that as well. There are so many things that is lacking within this team that I'm not even sure that we deserve objectively to get to that Champions League spot. In all honesty, we wish for it, we hope for it, but if you're speaking objectively, you look at the stats, then some of these teams above us deserve it a bit more than we do in levels of consistency and what they, let on the field every week.
I mean, if the season ended today without we have 8 rounds left,
Yeah,
right? This was round 30. The season
yeah,
ended today. Wholeheartedly, I would say Como's had the better season, particularly in context of who they are as a club and what the expectations were. And every time we seem to have some bit of momentum, we can't maintain it.
no,
And it stems again from the quality word that we use week in and week out on every podcast and YouTube session we record. And it comes down to mental fortitude and strength. Because on the Locatelli comment with the penalty, he's our penalty taker. He's our designated penalty taker. It's been like that since the first game of the season. And unless Locatelli changed, or unless Spalletti changed something that we don't know about, he's still number one on that list. So in that moment, it's supposed to be his. But if he knows he's having an off game, and it just happens, right? It just does happen that sometimes things don't click. The pass is always off. You're a half a step behind, whatever the reason is. If you recognize that, and that's what's going through your mind, then you're obligated to pass that ball to somebody who's hungry to step up and take it. I'm sure
yeah.
Vlahovic would have loved to step that down and mark his
Oh, yeah.
return, smashing that into the back of the net. Milik too,
Yeah.
my goodness, right? Any
Yeah,
of those
yeah,
guys would have wanted to. But if Locatelli's stepping up, what should be going through his mind is, I got this,
yeah.
right? Like, I'm the captain of Juventus. I secured the penalty at the end of last season. I've turned this season around in terms of my play. I have the ability to isolate what happened in this game and that I haven't had my best game, and I'm going to focus on this moment in front of me and just go at it. His body language was poor. I didn't even watch him take it. I'm sitting there on the couch and I see him walk up and I see the camera go in on
Yeah,
his face,
yeah.
and I had to
Exactly.
look away. I looked
Exactly.
away, and you and I had the same feeling. It did not feel like it was going to happen. And
And
yeah.
at times, you could argue that we've seen some spectacular games, and where we done our fino alla fine motto proud, with all respect. And it's just a shame that it always has to be that fino alla fine. Even last week against Udinese, we could have won 4 or 5-0 easily. Yet we were, suffering, so to speak, because that last counter in extra time almost, they almost scored the equalizer. It makes you feel like you can't trust this team. We don't have the ability to be clinical, to just say, okay, we have this stretch of games coming up. The only games that we have now in order for us to reach our target and get to that, destination that we should be at. It's too many, ups and downs, and it genuinely scares me. It genuinely scares me that this mentality or indecisiveness or whatever you want to call it keeps haunting us. And I only think the only reason you can leave that behind you is get these veteran players with a bit of more technical ability and a bit more Katsima, I don't know the word, and a bit more, yeah, that hungry, that fighting spirit,
Mhm.
but also that experience in. But in order to get to those guys, you need to, obtain other certain, things in terms
You
of
need to have an
Champions League
attractive
qualification.
situation that they wanna come to. Do
Yeah,
Goretzka, do Silva, do Sinesi. Do they come here if we're in the Europa League?
yeah, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we have the best offer on the table for Bernardo Silva. We
But
honestly
does an
do.
extra 1,500,000 a year when you're playing
It's
Europa League, like versus whatever? I mean, I don't know what other offers he
no,
he
it's more in
has, but
terms of length. He has, offers for short-term contracts, a typical
mm,
1+1. We have, a little less on net salary with respect to the other offers, but our contract is longer. It's a 3+1 that we offered, which makes him feel valued, and he sees the long-term strategy and a club where he can end his career, so to speak, if he wishes to. So, but if you have to get back to him in June and say, hey, it's cool that you like our proposal. It's also cool that we like you, but we have to diminish the net salary by at least 2 million a year because we can't afford otherwise. And we're going to play like Poznan and consorts on Thursday every night. So yay. I mean, it's
yeah.
not realistic. It's not realistic. Not even for guys like Senesi, who are not at the level of a Bernardo Silva, but not even, for guys like Mingueza, who can join a bunch of other teams that are ready, to do something in Champions League. A friend of mine said there's a hell of a lot of less risk in joining Club Bruges right now than Juventus, because Club Bruges has been playing consistently 6 or 7 years in a row in Champions League while
Yeah.
obtaining decent results and overperforming and making a name for themselves. As a player, you enter the spotlight a lot more in a positive sense than you would at Juventus, which is kind of tragic, but in a way is a bit truthful as well.
I mean, I mean, it's a different pond, but
Yeah.
I get the point, right? And I don't really want to talk much more about that game. I'd rather maybe for the next 15, 20 minutes talk more about kind of looking ahead. I think that's more enjoyable. Is there anything else about that match that you think we didn't touch on or didn't give it the appropriate
Um,
respect?
I found it strange, Spalletti wise, that he decided to sub out Boga instead of Yildiz, because Boga's game was
Someone in the chat said
better.
the same thing. I agree with you. I think Boga was having a nice game, and I think Yildiz was. Yeah, here it is from Havard 90.
Yeah, because I think these are learning moments for Kenan as well. If you sub him in a game where he's subpar, but he's still trying too hard, and you hit him where it hurts, so to speak, because he'd hate to be subbed at that point. But it could be a real lesson for him, and to understanding that at times he needs to simplify things as well. And you could have helped him, but you could have helped the team as well, because Boga was far more threatening, I felt, and especially with somebody like Vlahovic and Milik simultaneously coming on, I think Boga would have linked up very nice with these guys, or would have provided
Yeah.
at least a decent cross or two, given the things that he's done so far for us. So I found
Did
I
Milik
found that a
and or
bit.
Vlahovic come in too late?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because we've now grown accustomed to not playing with a proper center forward for a couple of games now, since Spalletti definitely botched David as well, maybe rightfully. But once you have, your number nines up in training and match fit, I think you should use them, because you
I
could
mean, if they can
see,
play 10 minutes, they can certainly play 20 minutes, right?
yeah, or at least, or you alternate them, and you see who's more match fit, because let's be honest, it was 665 days, and I counted them, since we saw Milik on the pitch for an official game. So, one might assume that he wouldn't be able to play a whole half, but if he can play a whole half for 30 minutes, let him play,
Oh, but
the
they
last
came in
30
the
minutes. And
79th minute. Why aren't you
yeah,
bringing them in like the 60th, right? And
yeah,
give the team a half hour, because Sassuolo wasn't going to score again unless
no,
we again had another boneheaded play. But like,
yep,
we needed a goal. The season was on the line,
yep,
and you
yeah,
shape up the attack 10 minutes before full time.
yeah.
I don't.
And this is because I want to bring this back to what Beppe said a couple of months ago, that Spalletti is a very good coach. But when things tend to go a bit south, he starts making like this weird kind of decisions. He tries to, pull out a certain move to do something fabulous or whatever, and does something unexpected, but it's also not very productive. And there were a couple of things that, made me raise my eyebrows a bit throughout the game. Especially when he shouted that Luka should take that penalty. If you have a player that's confident, that wants to take the ball, and your penalty taker says, "Man, go right ahead," then you should leave it at that. You shouldn't get mixed up into that as a coach, I feel.
Yeah, but no one's saying anything if Locatelli buries that, right? Like, he's supporting his captain, who is supposed to be the one taking it, respecting the hierarchy. Like,
Mhm.
I don't challenge him on that. I get your point, but I don't hold that against him. I mean, it's easy for us, I think, to second guess some of the substitutions or some of the changes. Why this player? Why not that player? But at the end of the day,
Also,
like, the
Moretti,
players did get themselves into decent positions, but the quality, again, like, we're just repeating ourselves, right? Like,
yeah, and
they had opportunities, but were unable to finish.
the Moretti substitution had me baffled once again. What is up with, because he had a decent amount of playing time as a sub. I think it was 35 minutes that he had in the second half, Moretti, maybe even 30. But
Yeah, 30.
why again Miretti? Why can't we just get over the fact that I get that we don't have anybody else, but for God's sake, bring somebody in from
Well,
next
I
gen. Let
think
him have a
what
crack at
was
it.
going through my mind when I saw that is, we had 3 players who are very comfortable on the left on the field, in Cambiaso, in Yildiz, in Boga, and not enough play going centrally at all. And I think that the sacrifice of Cambiaso for Miretti was to put somebody who can go a bit more central. And just, we don't need another player on the left right now, especially defensively, when they're not moving forward. So, like, I I get the criticism of Miretti because he's been very underwhelming since the last Sassuolo game, where I thought he actually looked really decent in
Yeah,
that away game
yeah,
at the beginning of January.
yeah,
But he's been very poor since then. And
yeah.
it was not a good outing tonight, but that's what I imagine Spalletti was thinking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. I mean, it's logical in that sense, but it just feels to me that Spalletti is making a bit more mistakes than he did in the past, and out of frustration as well. I think genuinely that Spalletti at times is very frustrated on how things are going. And I don't know if you catch this overseas, but if you look at the Zone episode and you watch the game live, they have all these mics close to the bench. You hear Spalletti really, yelling at players in terms of why, like very, very frustrated with them. I've noticed this today with Kelly a certain amount of times, with Conceição as well, and with Thuram. And, it makes me wonder if your coach gets frustrated about certain things that should be fairly simple for a professional footballer, and there's something
Yeah.
underlying that we need to figure out on how to remedy, because we can't make progression on in such a way.
We've taken 38, I think, of a potential 51 points under Spalletti so far. I mean, I'd like to say that we're not going to be second guessing his renewal. I want continuity in this club, and like we started this by saying the first half we played well, like the quality and the style, not the quality. Let me take that back. The style of the play, the approach, the attacking kind of fluidness was there, but the players aren't able to give us a final product. And perhaps with some better players, with his style, with his preparation, we're in a better spot. And like, I think if I can allow this to be an opportunity to shift the conversation a little bit, whether we finish top 4 or not, we're going to need to make some changes to this team, obviously, and we're going to need more money in the bank. Would I be crazy to suggest? I mean, we have to sell David for sure. You're going to get capital gains on that, and which is a good thing. You're going to make money on that deal for the balance sheet, and he's just not going to have space on this squad. Foregone conclusion. I would seriously consider selling Bremer and Thuram. Am I crazy for saying that?
No, you'd be crazy if you'd say don't sell them at this point. And I'm speaking in fairy tale language now. But if you were to hand me a piece of paper where it says black on white that if we sell Yildiz and we get Goretzka, Senesi, Bernardo Silva, and 4 or 5 lesser additions and to complete the team, I don't think I'd be opposed, in all honesty. I get the fact that he's a talent and that he's, the next best thing in footballing world, but if you can't pair him with decent players, then the team will go nowhere.
That's very true.
And I don't want Kenan to be successful. I want Juventus to be successful. And Kenan could win the golden ball by scoring 30-odd goals and 30 assists in a season. But if we still finish 5th in that season, then what use is he to us?
Pretty sure we'd be in first if he had 30 goals and 30 assists.
Yeah, that's why I hinted at the fairy tale kind of analogy. But
you can't prioritize the individual, right? And just like either just like our emotional attachment or a desire. I think while everybody wants to see the club succeed, when you're watching your team play, there obviously are players you get attached to and players you want to see succeed more than others. And he's obviously one of those, but the point that you're making is we can't let that feeling or emotion come before what's required to strengthen the rest of the squad. And that's why, like, you look at players that you can sell for more than like 10 or 15 million, right? If we decide we're going to go sell Zagrova, what are you going to get for him? Right? Not much. You try and sell a Cambiasso right now. Outside of Italy, I don't think you're like his stock has fallen so far. Like who can you actually get money for? Like Bremer's clause, what is it, 45 million this summer?
Yeah, I don't even know if the clause is still valid, to be honest. I think they removed that. Because
if you can move on for David 15.
But I mean, even the clause, Bremer is worth for 40 million at least.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like, I think you could get 100 million between Bremer, Thuram, and David.
Yeah, we haven't even spoken about Nico and Douglas Luiz and whatever. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, we're going to replace them with, because the basic strategy of transfers is that you sell a player in order to get somebody who's better or will be better potentially after X amount of time. And I don't see anybody available on the transfer market that we can get without that Champions League, because I've said it on Beppe Show as well. Yeah. If Lewandowski comes, he'll score at least 20 goals in Serie A. I'm
If he
just
stays
counting Serie
healthy.
A.
If he stays
If he,
healthy.
yeah, if he's playing, he's scoring. That's about. I think we can all agree on that. But if you offer him a 1-year contract and you have to play Conference League, if I'm Robert Lewandowski, I'm not sure I'm going to go into
It's a
that particular.
non-offer. It's a non-option, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same for Bernardo Silva. I mean, you could say, okay, I have a 4-year contract. I have to, sit one out in the Conference League in order to get back to. But even that's not a given. So that makes your negotiations a bit harder. You could sell Cambiasso as well for 30 million. I think you could easily get 30 million out of him. But then you need a left back who's potentially better than Cambiasso, and you have to spend less than 30 million, or else, the whole point of selling him
Yeah.
is a bit moot at that point. So it's very difficult. The Champions League qualification, I've been saying this since September, and everybody thought I was crazy, or at least some of the people that follow us thought I was crazy. But I've repeated this over and over. Champions League qualification, especially this year, is a must. And I'm not so sure that we'll make it, even if you look at the calendar that we have in front of us. There's still a hell of a lot of
We're gonna
difficulty.
potentially be 3 points behind 2 teams tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the teams above those teams are not losing points because, should they be losing points, that make for a shift
Yeah.
in the whole top 4, division of and whatever. But, I saw Milan today. They were not good. They won.
I caught 15, 20 minutes. I mean, it's Allegri, right?
It's Allegri, yeah, and you know that, and the same, with Napoli, because you have Anguissa back, you have De Bruyne back, which makes for quality injection in that team. So they're not going to drop
Napoli
the
could win
hell
out
out.
with one game a week with their players coming back.
Yeah,
They
and
could win out the season.
also that's a bit of a frustration because we all thought, oh, we're out of the Champions League, but let's look at the silver lining. We have one game to play, so we'll be fitter, we'll be more aggressive in those games because they're do or die for us. And then you come to the conclusion that that's not the case. We looked weak, tired, and uninterested and not focused tonight. Which if you have a week to prepare for this game, uh, it raises a lot of questions in that respect.
It does, and it's like we're getting back to the match, but it's like, did Spalletti not prepare the team in the right way? Were the players too nonchalant and egotistical about this match? Was it just an off night for everyone? And if we play this game 10 more times, we're going to win it 10 times out of 10. It's just, I don't know. It's just a really disappointing night of football for this squad where we could not afford to drop points, and we did just that. And now we're on the outside look. We will likely be on the outside looking in this time tomorrow after Roma and Como play Lecce and Pisa respectively, which on paper should be 2 pretty straightforward wins for both of those sides. And we're going to be looking down 8 games, hoping that those teams drop at least 4 points, and we're not dropping anything.
That's the scary part.
And that's the scary part.
dropping.
I'm very concerned at this point that we are looking at Europa League football next year or Conference League, right? I mean,
Yeah,
just
it could go
because we're
both
not
ways.
finishing 4th doesn't mean we're finishing 5th, right? The 6th
No.
could very much be in the realm of possibilities here. And like your point early, does it become a blessing in disguise where it forces us to be incredibly pragmatic, incredibly tricky and crafty in the moves that we're doing and the types of players we're bringing in? Does it give us a chance to reset a bit and think really, really intelligently with the limited resources we have and have a full season, a full summer with Spalletti and a full season with him getting the right types of players into his system? Or does it all just come crashing down? because we don't have the front office, we don't have the management, we don't have the leadership to rise to the moment. And we're stuck in this purgatory of the
Yeah.
objective being get to fourth place for the next 5 years.
Uh, we're a bit in football limbo, so to speak. And it's also, I think, partially due to the fact that, we are not trying to compete. We've made it very clear from the start of the season on, oh, our ambition is fourth position. But if that's your aspiration, I don't know. You should always aim. And I'm not saying we had a Scudetto winning team or we have that, but you're still Juventus. And if you as
Match
a
day
player,
one,
as a
when you
coach,
step on the field,
yeah,
your ambition is to win the Scudetto because simply due to the fact that you have that shirt
yeah,
on your back. And until it's
and
not in the realm of possibility, you continue to believe that it is.
yeah, and even with even if you play Champions League, we're good if we reach the knockout round of 16. No, we're not. No, we're not. You could inside management, you could say, okay, this is the break-even point financially for us. We need that at least top four, and we need that round of 16 to have a financial stable year. And I get that. I get that from a management perspective, from a financial perspective, but don't come out on a football pitch and state that. Come out on that pitch. Whatever tournament you're playing, we're here to win. Whatever it takes. Fino alla
Because when you
fine.
aim for fourth and you slip up, you end up in fifth or sixth.
Yeah,
You aim
yeah,
for
yeah.
first, you slip up second, third, maybe, or you're in top four. When you have that
Also,
mentality,
you
it's
you
really frustrating.
you have a winter transfer market, but you need to attract new players. But 5 months prior to that, you proclaim you want to get top four. What player in his right mind would come to a team that just aspires to be in the top four? I mean, that's setting the standard pretty low for yourself, I feel. Um, and I find that a bit disrespectful. And I
Yeah.
get it. You started with Tudor, who you didn't want as being Comoli and whatever but still you had 2 months of work, preparation time to make a team or create a team, even without spending millions and millions and millions. But in this Serie A, not to be competitive, and we weren't competitive already in November. I think we were out of the Scudetto race, even mathematically. I feel, or maybe not, but you know what I'm saying. Just doesn't add up. Like, doesn't add up. Because if you look at what points the top four has already lost, if you were an outsider and you were stable in terms of getting results, and you
Yeah.
would be second now, and you would still have a mathematical chance on the Scudetto. Um, and we've seen crazier things happen, right? But
We
it's
just have
it's
to
it's.
keep believing. I think for these last 8 matches and
Do you believe? What's Kevin's point of view, unfiltered and raw at this point? Is it Champions League? Is it Europa League? Or is it Conference League for Kevin?
it depends if I'm speaking with the heart or the brain, right? Because the heart says this team does have more experience than Como or Roma in this position. Roma is a team that has achieved nothing in their history. Como has had a great season, but shouldn't be here. And I think the reality is next year they're going to be a dumpster fire because Fabregas, I'm sure, will go somewhere else. Nico Paz is gone. They won't be able to hold up, and they're going to end up finishing 8th or 9th next season, right? Like, they're not, like, credit to them for what they've done coming up from Serie B, being in a position where they're playing beautiful football. We know the story there. No disrespect to them, but we should be there. And we've shown at times that we have the ability to rise to a moment and overcome it at times, not consistently. So there's a part of me that just keeps believing that we will squeeze this out. And whether it takes a soft foul at the top of the box from a player of ours on loan to set up a penalty kick in the dying minutes of a game in order to get there, or we find another way. Like, there's a part of me that, like, the heartbeat says we can do it, but the head goes back to these conversations we have week in and week out, where it's the energy and the passion we have coming off of a 3-0 home win against Napoli. And it's just like, we're back. This is clicking. The players are coming together. And then we slide right back off. And it's this up and down, up and down, up and down. We could go win the next 3 games
And lose the
and then
5-1.
lose the last 2. Because there's no continuity within this team, right? We've played some incredible matches this season, and there's games that I've seen this season that I'll remember well into the future of just how great those individual moments were.
Mm-hmm.
But in the whole of this season, it's just been wildly inconsistent, and it comes back to the quality of the players. It comes back to too many individual mistakes, and comes back to throwing chances away. Like, and I don't even want to talk about the refereeing errors, where I still think in a parallel universe, we have another 5 or 6 points as a result of that, let alone the 4 we've dropped from missed penalties.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I'm going to answer saying we're going to get there in the end, but I know that defies logic on what we've seen through the first 30 rounds.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm a bit in the same boat as you are, but I have to say, I think we'll make conference. I think this team, if we slip up again and we see the point differential being bigger than it is now, I think this team will mentally throw the towel. Because if you're not motivated for these games where it's do or die for that qualification, I don't see how they can motivate themselves when it's going to get even harder in terms of bridging that gap. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish I was still clinging on to that, but this eerie feeling tonight, just came crawling up my spine, saying that we're done for. Yeah.
Maurizio from around Turin, right?
Yeah.
We had the lovely dinner with him the evening before Juve Napoli in Turin. So for those of you still with us, I mean, Maurizio runs the Around Turin group. He just sent a message. Torino, Lecce, Cagliari, Lazio, Como ×2, Sassuolo, 4 cazzo di punti su 21. From those 7 games against poor sides, we've got 4 points out of a possible 21.
Yeah.
And that's why, despite Inter losing pretty much every big match this season, they clean up house against those, and they're still sitting in pole position, looking down at everybody else.
That's when you have an individual quality that, just, gets you those clinical wins in. And ultimately, we can twist and turn however we want. 3 points against Lecce or 3 points against Inter, there's still 3 points.
Yep.
And we've thrown away a lot of points where we figured this was going to be a walk in the park, or, whatever. We decided to play with a false number 9, or we invented some weird hybrid formation, or Tudor thought that, playing this way would be better, or Cambiasso said, well, I'm just going to turn the switch off and pretend I'm in my, backyard. It's all these kind of small moments that happen so frequently that, again, just come to bite you in the ass. And you have a team like Inter who will never win against a good side, a really good footballing side. Inter will never win from a really good footballing side, but they can beat the small and mediocre sides, and they're just laughing their way to the Scudetto.
In
the
a
whole
really
of
weak
Italy,
season for Serie A, where you have Kenan tied with 3 other players, second most goals on 30 rounds in. I mean, we don't have any representation in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. It's And even like the title race isn't won through ambition. It's not around like who's going to step up in the end. It's like who's going to trip up the least, right? It's
Yeah,
like the reverse of the conversation, right?
yeah,
It's which is
yeah. And
unfortunate.
even if you look at, and this is not even a lie, I was watching the Milan game and just with one eye, like not into full focus, and my daughter sat on the remote and it switched over to a Belgian game. And in all honesty, like the pace, the tempo, everything, the enthusiasm was pretty much the same. And I'm not joking, I'm not even being funny. It was pretty
Yeah.
much the same, the fluidity, the tempo, everything. It took me like a good 3 minutes to assess that, hey, this isn't, the game I was watching.
Yeah.
So it's that doesn't help either. The bar is set so low that, and if a bar is set low, and I know this being a teacher, if I set the bar low for my students, then all motivation, all
Yeah.
successful experience that you want them to get through learning, you're taking away from them. You need to set the bar high. And as I think it was Agnelli who said that, if you without pressure, coal will remain coal, and with pressure, you at least have a shot
Yeah.
at getting some diamonds out of him. So yeah, I think this is a bit of a huge stigma that we as a whole in Italian football need to counter. And it's not coincidental that when Juventus isn't doing well, Italian football's not doing well
As a whole
as a
in
whole.
Europe, the national team, which I
Yeah.
imagine will crash out against Northern Ireland within the next
Let's hope so.
coming up here. And like that's what stinks about, and this is I think where we'll wrap up for this evening. The players are going to have to marinate in this result for 2 weeks
Yeah.
instead of stepping away from what should have been a win, a comfortable win at home. You get the job and you focus on the gauntlet around what's ahead.
Yeah.
And again, especially if the results hold tomorrow, which we expect with Roma and Como, the players are going to have to sit there thinking about what could have been, looking at two teams that are 3 points ahead of you, and Spalletti trying to, these players who are going to go away on international break and focus on their national teams. He has to try and get that squad back together to keep their heads down and just putting one foot in front of the other and taking it one game at a time. And I just this came at the worst time.
Yeah.
There's not a game next week for us to just like blow this off and just continue forward with 8 games. There's 24 points to win. We've got to get
24.
more or less.
Yeah. No, like literally no slip up, even against the tougher sides. We still have to face Milan and Milan, and you never know.
I have more faith in us being able to rise to the occasion and beating Milan, and then struggling at home against Fiorentina or away at Toro on the last day of the season. Like those are the games that spook me.
Yeah, I think all the games spook me because you never know with this team. In the best of days, we could beat Real Madrid, so to speak. But on our worst of days, we can, and we saw that, lose against Cagliari
In the rain.
or Lecce or whatever. Or yeah, I think we can conclude with the fact that, up until thus far today, we could say that we don't deserve it and probably won't make Champions League. Now it's up to the guys to prove us wrong. I think we supported them this whole season as much as we could, and we always tried. Even I tried to see the silver lining or the light at the end of the tunnel. it's now all in their hands. It's not even in their hands anymore. They threw that away as well. So now it's just
Yeah.
getting wins in, even as dirty as or how clinical as you can envision. But that's what's going to have to be done in order for us to reach just Champions League qualification. We're not talking about a Scudetto here or whatever. We're just talking about Champions League qualification. And to come to this after 5 years of being in this limbo situation, it's pretty saddening.
That it is. That it is. But we've got 8 games. Crazier things have happened. And we're just going to have to keep fighting until the end, until it's no longer mathematically possible. We'll continue speculating on potential outcomes. But the reality is we still have every opportunity to go and get this. And we'll be here for anybody who wants to continue watching and listening. To Frederic, myself, Zach, Farhad, Jack, and the rest of our crew. Thank you for spending time with us. We know this is not the easiest of times to be a Juventino, but it's always much more enjoyable to share in it with others. Thank you for spending time with us, Frederic. As always, it's a pleasure. I know it's super late over there.
It's okay, man.
Let you get back to your Saturday evening.
No, I enjoy spending it with you, even though the result, is basically shit for everybody that has a black and white heart. But as you said, we'll be here no matter what, fino alla fine. And we hope to share at least some more enjoyable moments with the people that are following us and sticking with us even through our group therapy sessions. And let's hope for the best, if not, this season, up to the next.
And I think with that concludes group therapy session 7,462 and episode 354 of the Turin Giants podcast. Fino alla fine, Forza Juve.